I want to thank all of our members of our executive committee who did all the work this year. As I said, I'm a ceremonial head. Walter tells me when to be on the phone, and I attend a phone conference, and all the executive committee members tell them what substantive work they're doing, and I get to say yes, 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 yes. So it's been fun. Many of you have heard the story, and I'm going to repeat it. Last week, in 1981, I graduated from the University of Georgia Law School, and I was pursuing an MBA and a Juris Doctorate degree, and I did not know which way I wanted to go. Judge Drake, whose former wife, late wife, Ruth, was from my hometown. And my daddy called her brother and said, "Can you get Jim a meeting with Judge Drake to talk about the alternatives of what he should do?" So in 1981, last week, I went to Judge Drake's home and had a drink with him and talked about the alternatives. And he found out I had delivered a resume to Jerry Kaplan's office here in Macon. And Judge Drake said, "Well, I know Jerry, I'll call him right now and tell him to hire you." And he did, and the rest is history. And Judge Drake has been my mentor since that time. And every time I would appear in Judge Drake's court, he would always say, "Mr. Smith, I'd like to see you in chambers." And I'd go back and he'd say, "Jim, what's going on? How you doing? It's so good to see you." So, the ends of court is about mentoring. And I have had two of the greatest mentors in Jerry Kaplan, my best friend and senior partner, and Judge Drake. So we are so fortunate to be here. And I can tell you there was no way in the world that I would ever have imagined in June of 1981 that I would ever be the president of an ends of court named in honor of this great gentleman and jurist. So, Judge Drake, thank you. I apologize for being emotional, but I ask you to keep in your prayers my mentor, Jerry Kaplan's wife, Louise Kaplan, who had a stroke last week. She is in Atlanta. She's been under sedation, and they are bringing her out. We don't know her situation, but Jerry is at home. Jerry suffers from Parkinson's disease, but he is very active. Actually, Ann and I had dinner with him last Friday night, and Louise had a stroke on Saturday afternoon. So please keep Louise Kaplan in your mind and in your prayers. Again, welcome. Thank you for the executive committee for all the work you've done this year, and please have a good evening and enjoy the meal, and at an appropriate time, Ward Stone's going to introduce our speaker. So thank you very much.
Well, good evening again. I'd like to join Walter in welcoming everyone to Macon. We're glad you made the journey this afternoon. We're glad you had pretty weather to come down here, and we trust that the weather will continue until you make it home. Tonight I have a great pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker this evening, Professor Michael Sabbath. Mike joined the faculty at Mercer Law School in 1978 after graduating from the University of Wisconsin and receiving his JD from Emory University in 1975. Following his graduation, he did a tour of duty at what was then known as Jones, Bird, and Howell in Atlanta, now known as Austin and Bird. At that time, I was a 2L at Mercer in 1978 when Mike arrived, and had the pleasure of attending some of his first lectures, which even at that point were both informative and entertaining. Mike possesses a wonderful combination of competence and showmanship, injected with humor, which is so effective in educating law students. Mike became a full professor of law at Mercer in 1984. He then returned to Columbia University School of Law in 1985 to receive his LLM. But his greatest achievement of the 80s was in 1988, when he and I coached the mighty Vine Ingle Peaches to an unparalleled Little League record which regrettably has been lost to history. Descending from the mountaintop after the Vine Eagle Little League, Mike moved on to build a solid reputation as a writer and a lecturer, having written and presented over 24 scholarly articles and program materials. He also developed a reputation as a capable administrator, serving as associate and then interim dean at Mercer from 1997 to 2004. However, Professor Sabbath is probably best known as an educator. Mike has toured both Emory and Wake Forest law schools as a visiting professor of law, and just to illustrate that he is both open-minded and non-discriminatory, he has also generously agreed to lecture at the University of Georgia Law School. Mike has taught courses in contracts, sales, secure transactions, debtor-creditor relations, payment systems, and remedies. He has also served as a reporter for bar committees that have been instrumental in the enactment of amendments to UCC Articles 3 and 4, as well as Article 8, which deals with investment securities. For his efforts, Mike has received accolades from both the bar and the judiciary. From 1996 to 2007, he was Walter Homer Drake Jr. Professor of Law at Mercer, and in 2007, he was named SBLI Walter Homer Drake Jr. Endowed Chair in Bankruptcy Law. However, Mike's most telling accolade comes from his students. I've had the privilege of interviewing and hiring a great many of Mike's students over the last 40 years, both as law clerks and associates, a number of who are here tonight. I always ask a student to identify his favorite classes in law school, whether that was the class that he got or he or she got their best grades in or not. And the responses have been remarkably consistent over those 4 decades that, quote, I really enjoyed Professor Sabbath's courses. Often they'll also volunteer, and I really learned a lot. This evening you're in for a treat. Professor Sabbath will be tackling a topic which is at the very heart of this organization. He will be addressing ethics and the vital role that practicing members of the bar play in monitoring young attorneys. In other words, what can Mike's old former students teach his recent and current students? Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Mike Sabbath.
I clearly should have asked for money for giving this gig. I didn't realize how wonderful I was. Thank you for having me here. The purpose of the American Inns of Court is to promote professionalism, ethics, civility, and practice skills in the legal profession. And you might ask, why don't law schools do that? Why do we need you? Why can't we teach professionalism and ethics and all of that in law school? And honest to God, we try, okay? And I think we're doing a better job now than back when I was in law school at Emory from 72 to 75. I remember when I was a law student at Emory, we had a 1-hour third-year course on legal ethics that Dean Ray Patterson taught. I know some of you probably know Ray Patterson. Nice, brilliant, I mean, I just love the guy. If I was not afraid of guns and I had one in class with me, I would have shot myself. It was the most boring, awful 1-hour course I think I'd ever had. It just going over rule and modern rule of this and modern rule of this, and it was pass-fail where nobody cared, right? You're about to graduate, you're going to take the bar exam, but we endured it. And he was such a wonderful man that, you know, we just loved him. It's better now. At Mercer, for example, we still have a third-year course on legal ethics. They talked about the model rules and ethical issues. Instead of 1 hour, it's 3 hours. So we've expanded that course. In addition, in the first year, for example, we have a course called the legal profession. And we bring in outside speakers, we break into small groups, we show videos, we talk about how lawyers, it can be so rewarding. We talk about alcoholism, depression. In fact, some of the students call it the legal depression course instead of legal profession. But it's good. And in fact, we've gotten awards from the ABA saying this is wonderful. You know, of all the schools in the country, you're focused on professionalism, ethics. We really do as good a job, I think, as any law school in the country. That being said, I happen to think that practicing law is like playing golf, which I'm not very good at playing golf. Are they having trouble hearing me? Can you hear me okay? Okay. You can read books about how to play golf. You can watch videos about how to play golf, right? But until you get out on the course and you get that club in your hand, you don't know how frustrating it is, how difficult golf is. You got to get in there and do it. I think law is the same way. We can bring in speakers and we can have them read articles and we can show videos of interviews with prominent attorneys, but they get into practice and that's when they learn what it's like to be a lawyer. That means all of you have a responsibility when these young lawyers graduate and come work for you, whether you're a judge, whether you have a big law firm, a small law firm, whether you're a Chapter 13 trustee, you've got to continue their education. Law schools just are not going to do it for you. So each one of you, whether you know it or not, is serving as a mentor for these young people. And in preparing this talk, I reflected on my years right out of law school going to work at Jones, Bird & Howell. Now it's been 40-something years. And I thought about some of the people at that firm who helped me kind of get my footing and figure out what a lawyer actually does. Because I'll tell you, when I graduated law school, I looked damn good on paper, right? You know, good grades, law review, coif, whatever the hell that means. You know, oh, look at this guy, you know. I got out of law school, and I think like a lot of you, I was clueless. I mean, to actually practice law, what does a good lawyer really do? Now, I could write a memo. I could do research. We didn't have Westlaw and stuff then. We actually used things called books, okay? So I could stack books up, and I could write a memo. I could write a brief. You know, I could do all that. But as far as practicing law, I really didn't know what I was doing, okay? And I relied on people in the firm, sometimes asking them, sometimes just watching them, seeing how they related to clients, see how they related to other lawyers, and that's where I learned what I was supposed to do. Some of the things I had to learn were kind of basic. So I'm gonna talk about some of my experiences. I did not know how to dress like a lawyer. Looking around the room, y'all are pretty sharp, okay? I grew up in a suburb of St. Louis, right near Washington University. And my dad owned a deli called the Posh Nosh in Clayton, Missouri. And in fact, I walked around in high school. This is a Posh Nosh t-shirt. It's a bagel sandwich, okay? So most of what I wore in high school was things like this, a t-shirt like that. I spent my high school years slicing corned beef and pastrami, reaching into barrels and getting pickles out. So I would go to school, to high school, wearing a shirt like this, smelling like a corned beef sandwich and pickles. I was not voted most likely to succeed in life, okay? And I understood that. I was just a nerdy little Jewish kid like this. I then went to the University of Wisconsin from 1968 to 72. It was during Vietnam. So I had long hair and I marched around a lot and I was dirty. You know, I did not own a suit. I had no idea how to dress other than kind of like a hippie, because that's what the girls seemed to like. I decided to come to law school at Emory. I remember it was February and it was like 2 degrees up in Wisconsin. I came to visit Emory, it was 70 degrees. I thought, what the hell am I doing up in Wisconsin? You know, I'm coming down to Emory. So I came to Emory and I knew I needed a suit because I was going to go to law school. And I had seen movies with Southern lawyers and things. I don't think Matlock was on TV yet. I bought myself a powder blue seersucker suit. Okay, I swear to God. And I never admitted to my wife, Lisa, I bought a white belt and white shoes. Okay? I know. Now, if any of you are wearing that out there, I apologize. But come on, you got to get with it, you know? So I think I bought the suit at J.C. Penney because I think it said Towncraft. Is that J.C. Penney? I think it was a J.C. Penney suit. So I got to Mercer Law School, and the career services people said, you cannot interview in that suit. That isn't the impression you want to make on law firms. I had no money. But back then, I don't know if any of you are from the area, there was a warehouse, a place that manufactured suits in Loganville. So I drove out I-20 to Loganville, and they sold directly to the public. I got 2 suits for $79. And I think they threw in like a salad bar and an oil change, okay? I mean, these were cheap suits. So I wore those through the interviewing and the summer internship at Jones, Burton Howell, and then they hired me full-time. And I looked around at the other people, and I knew something didn't look right. So I went to my first mentor. I went to a guy named Dick Allison. And Dick Allison I was a litigator. He was in the real estate section. But I liked him because he dressed sharp, and I heard he was friends with Bob Steed and a lot of the young lawyers at King & Spalding. And everybody knows that the King & Spalding lawyers are the best dressed, most polished lawyers in the city. Don't take my word for it. Ask any lawyer at King & Spalding and they'll tell you it's true. Right? That's King & Spalding. So I talked to him and I remember he said, well, there's a place called H. Stockton and then there's Brooks Brothers. So I went to H. Stockton, I went to Brooks Brothers, and the suits are really expensive there. I mean, really expensive. But I figured I was being billed at $50 an hour. I was getting paid $19,000 a year in 1975. King & Spalding paid $20,000. But they had to pay the extra $1,000 so that people could dress so nice, I guess. I don't know what it was. So I decided to buy it. And I looked like everybody else. I kind of patterned myself. Now I learned that you could not get carried away using older guys as role models. There's a guy at my firm named Trammell Vickery. He was an antitrust litigator. And I thought he was he ended up going to Hansel Post, which is now Jones Day. I thought he was awesome. I watched him in court. He was awesome. He wore suspenders. Now, he reminded me of Spencer Tracy in Inherit the Wind. Have you seen that? I mean, he looked great. So I went and bought suspenders with the little clips on them to hold them to my pants. And there was a guy named Jack Schroeder who did healthcare law, and he wore bow ties. I didn't know how to tie one. I got some little clip-on bow ties. I swear to you, I looked like a cross between Pee Wee Herman and Grandpappy Amos on the Real McCoys or something. There's a fine line between polished and total dork. And I passed over. The other thing I learned about clothing, by the way, about appropriate dress, there was a guy named Earl May who was the head of the litigation department. And I loved Earl. He was from Bainbridge, Georgia, had worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office, great litigator. He was a Georgia Bulldog fan. And on Fridays before a Bulldog game, he would wear a red sports coat with gray pants and red socks. And I said to one of the other partners, we don't dress like that. What's this with Earl? And I remember, I think it might have been Kip Kirkpatrick said to me, when you're a senior partner, you can wear whatever the hell you want, right? The same rules don't apply once you work your way up that high. I also had a lot to learn when I went to work. I did not drink a lot of alcoholic beverages in high school. When I worked at my dad's deli, I remember drinking a lot of certain things, but not liquor. Okay, remember, do any of you know what Dr. Brown soda is? If you're from New York, Dr. Brown's cream soda, Dr. Brown's root beer. If you've been to delis, that's kind of what I drank out of a bottle when I was a little kid. When I went to college, I went to school in Wisconsin, so we certainly drank beer because it's Wisconsin. I didn't know much about wine. There was a wine called Boone's Farm wine. It was $1.99. It tasted terrible. But if you were smoking some stuff at the same time, it wasn't so bad. You know, you got kind of used to the taste. If you had a really hot date, you might buy Blue Nun, and there's a thing called Mateus with the round bottle at the bottom, but that was like $3.99. Now, I didn't know my wife was going to be here when I put this together, so I will say that none of the dates I had in college were nearly as hot as my wife, Lisa, who's sitting over there. Honestly, I swear. But in any event, I went to work at Jones, Bird & Howell, and there was an attorney there named Gene Branch. And he had a lot to do with developing Peachtree City, I remember. So Gene took me out with some clients, and everybody ordered drinks. And I ordered a whiskey sour. So I get this drink, and it's got foam on the top, a little orange in it, a cherry, I know. And I was sipping with my little straw, and I looked around, and I didn't look, other people didn't drink drinks like mine. You know, no umbrellas in it or anything like that. And as we're leaving, Gene said to me, brown or clear? So I learned to drink scotch. It took a while, but and I worked my way up to Glenlivet, a single malt scotch. So now I had a Brooks Brothers suit, drinking single malt scotch, King and Spalding. It would fit right in. I don't know why they didn't make me an offer when I interviewed there initially. I also had to learn about certain equipment. You all have laptops now and things. When I practiced, every lawyer would always carry around one of these. It's called a pen, okay? This happens to be a Mercer pen. It's something you write with. And in fact, some of us can do cursive. We can actually write things and stuff, so we all had these pens. Well, I was always losing my pen. So I bought disposable crummy pens, and I'd chew on them. I was always trying to quit smoking then. I'd chew on them. It was all slobbery and everything. Well, there was a real estate attorney named Bob Foreman. And he would take me to closings. I'd never been to closings before. And he took me to a closing in the Equitable building, Kilpatrick, Cody, Regenstein, whatever they were. Anybody here who works for Kilpatrick in Stockton now? Maybe not. At the time, I think the Equitable building might have been the nicest building around. And I remember walking in there, and I was in the Howell building. It was a nice old building, but this was gorgeous. Not like the buildings are now, but I was afraid to sit down, even in my Brooks Brothers suit. It was such a nice building. Now, I heard they were spending over $9 a square foot. So I guess that was a lot of money back then for rent there. But in any event, I'm at this closing, and they're passing papers around, and Foreman asked me for my pen. So I reach in, and he looks at it, and it's a chewed up, terrible thing. So he said, never mind. As we're leaving, he says to me, Michael, Mont Blanc or Cross? So what the hell is Mont Blanc or Cross, you know? I looked it up. The pen costs as much as my 2 suits from Loganville. I mean, ridiculous, you know? I bought 2 Cross pens, silver ones. They're not as expensive as gold ones. And I lost them within a month. I figured, screw it, you can't listen to everything you're told by the book. Let me ask, how many of you people still always carry a pen at work? Okay, you still do. Yeah, you know, nowadays I guess you don't have to write much anymore. You type it in and everything. In any event. One other thing, and then I'll get to more serious matters. I learned something about having principles. And here's how I learned that. I was at my synagogue. I used to go to the temple on Peachtree. Rabbi Sugarman was there. I liked him. So I go, And a little old Jewish man, he was a camp survivor, comes up to me, and I had talked to him before. He says, "Are you attending this function on so-and-so date?" And I said, no, I'm going to my firm Christmas party at the Piedmont Driving Club. So he said to me, "You're going to the Piedmont Driving Club? Michael, they don't let Jews into the Piedmont Driving Club." Now, this was 1975 or 76. And I said, "Well, I was at the Christmas party there last year, and the food was great, and the people were nice, and a group from the Alliance Theater, I don't know if they're still in Atlanta, they came and they sang and danced. I had a wonderful time." And he said to me, "Where do you work?" And I said, "Well, I work at Jones, Bird and Howell." And he said, "You work there? Why don't you work for a nice firm like Lipschitz, Macy, Zussman, Sykes, and whatever it is? Morris and Sam, they would never have a party at the Piedmont Driving Club." Well, I didn't know Morris Macy at the time or Sam Zussman, but I'll bet they would not have had a party at the Piedmont Driving Club as I got to know them. But I went home and I thought about it. I said, the firm really should not be having parties if this is true, which I probably was back then. I don't know if it still is. We shouldn't be having parties. We had a number of Jewish people too. There was me, and there was David Minkin. I don't know if you've ever run into him. He was at my firm. Ruth Gershon was at my firm. And there was now they all told me they were Jewish. There was one guy who never told me he was Jewish, but he was a tax lawyer. He had curly hair, and his name was Arnold Feinstein. I decided he was Jewish. Something told me. I don't know what it was, but I figured he was. But I figured, we have a lot of Jewish people here. We shouldn't have. So I wanted to talk to somebody at the firm. Well, Bobby Jones had died years before I got there. And Judge Byrd, his friends called him Buster Byrd. Probably Judge Drake called him Buster. To me, he was Judge Byrd. And he was such a nice man, I didn't want to bother him with it. So I went to see Arthur Howell. It was a Jones, Byrd, and Howell. Now, Mr. Howell lived on Tuxedo Road. And I heard he was married to a Creamulsion person, I guess somebody from the cough syrup family, and a very distinguished Southern gentleman. And he had a number of kids. I talked to him once before. I don't know how many kids he had, but one was a lawyer at the firm who had gone to Harvard, and he went by the nickname Speed. It was Speed Howell. And they had another son who was at Emory a couple of years behind me named Jim, who of course was called Jimbo, because we're in the South. And I think Jimbo actually passed. He was a nice kid. I think he passed away at an early age. But in any event, Mr. Howell had called me into his office because his son Jim had met a girl at Emory from Long Island who was Jewish. And they were going to have a Jewish ceremony. And he wanted to ask me about some of the things at the Jewish ceremony. And at first he kept talking about something called a hoopla. And I figured it was a chuppah, the thing you get married under. It took us a while to figure that out. He asked me about the little skull cap. And I told him it's a yarmulke. I don't know if you need to wear it, but don't worry, it pops on and off, no permanent damage. But he was particularly interested in his son stepping on the glass and breaking it. And I assured him that it was wrapped up in a cloth. And I told him his son does get to keep his shoes on. I told him no Jewish man, no matter how much he loves a woman, is going to walk on broken glass. Now, I had this in here before I knew my wife was going to be here. In her case, I would walk on hot coals barefoot for her. But generally, a Jewish man would not do that. So in any event, I had a relationship with Mr. Howell, so I said to him, "Mr. Howell, I'm a little uncomfortable attending this Christmas party, whatever." And he responded something like, "Michael, don't worry. They'll let you in as long as you're with us. Have you got a problem?" And I remember I said something like, "No, sir," and I walked out, and I felt like such a wimp. Here I have this principle, I was going to say something when it came down to it, and a guy named Bob Walling had heard about this. Now, Bob Walling had been a judge in DeKalb County, and when Nixon was elected in '72, he got wiped out. And he seemed like a liberal Democrat to me, which is what I was. So I always liked Bob Walling. And he came in, he said, "I heard what happened." I said, "Yeah, Bob, He said, Michael, a person's got to have principles. You just can't have too many of them. Come to the party and have a good time. And I did, and I had a good time. And they were very nice, and the food was good. And I decided, you know, you got to pick your fights, right? And I was a young associate. I'd been there 2 years. Should I take on the firm? Should I demand we not have maybe I did wimp out. But I decided you had to decide what was best. Now, I also got some guidance in important ways. There was a guy at my firm who I truly admired named Ralph Williams. And he'd now be called, I guess, a transactional lawyer. But he took me around with him to meet with various clients. Atlantic Steel Company, we dealt with them a lot. Robert Shaw Controls Company, so we did a lot of construction stuff. New York Life, Watkins Leasing, the trucks you see that drive around. And what amazed me about Ralph is he would talk to these clients, and he was like one of them. He talked to the construction people, and you'd think he was in the construction business, and the leasing people, the leasing business. I mean, I said to him, Ralph, how do you know about all this? You're a lawyer. You know, I was taught law. How do you know all this business stuff? And he said, Mike, to represent these people, you have to understand their business. You can't represent them just knowing the law as it relates to the business. I said, well, damn, Ralph, it was hard enough learning the law. I got to learn construction. I got to learn leasing. He said, yeah, that's what you have to learn. And what you'll find is it makes the practice of law more interesting because you've got to learn those things. Being a lawyer isn't just knowing law. It's understanding your client's business. And I tried to remember that. I tried to put myself in their shoes, to be able to relate to them that way. He also developed these personal relationships with clients. There was a guy at Robert Shaw Controls Company named Buck Martin, who died in 2002. I got to know him, and I remember I was talking to him, and his hands were they were the biggest hands I'd ever seen on a human being. I always wondered, who is this Buck Martin guy with hands? So I finally asked Ralph, I said, what is it? Does he have like some genetic defect or something? He says, Buck Martin played football for Georgia Tech. He was on the national championship team in 1951. He was an All-American. He caught 4 passes in one game. And I said, how do you know this stuff? He made it a point to know that stuff. And with all of his clients, he knew how many kids they had. He knew where they went to school. And he said to me, you know, when you're dealing with clients, sure you talk business, but isn't it kind of nice to talk family and to talk sports? And he said, and with client development, it's crucial to do that. If they like you, they can relate to you, it really helps. They'll stick with you and they'll send people to you. And he taught me that. I thought you'd kind of do your business, thank you, you go out, but he taught me. I mean, he was important to me. I also had to learn how to deal with other attorneys. I was involved in a case, and I was handling it all by myself. I don't remember what it was about, but if I was handling it all by myself, it was obviously a very small case, because they wouldn't give it to a young associate, something really important. And the attorney on the other side was an older guy, and he was trying to push me around. I mean, he'd do things like he'd send me a notice for deposition at his offices. He wouldn't call me to work out a mutually convenient time for a deposition. He'd just send me this notice and think that I wouldn't know any better. I mean, he was a nasty guy. I did not like him. So, and I know he figured I was inexperienced and didn't know what I was doing. He was correct. But anyway, I went to talk to Earl May, the head of litigation. I said, Earl, this old guy is giving me grief. He's mistreating me. He's rude to me. Let me make his life miserable. You know, should I discover him to death? You know, should I send him a request for, but what can I do to make his life miserable? And here's what Earl said to me, this litigator, a tough guy. He said, calm down, Mike. This is not mortal combat. This is litigation. He's opposing counsel. He's not the enemy. Call the guy. Talk to him. Try to work it out. It'll be better for your client. and it'll be better for your blood pressure or something like that. Like, your gut reaction shouldn't be, get revenge. He's giving you crap, you're going to give it back to him, right? We're calling. Now, I called him. I still don't like him. I think he's a jerk. But you know what? He wasn't a monster. We did work it out. We probably avoided charging our clients a lot of money. I probably avoided a lot of heartburn and aggravation. And he taught me that it's okay, even with opposing counsel, to work with them. They didn't tell me. In law school, it was always this against this guy. Now, I think you bankruptcy folks understand there's often so little money involved, what's the point in fighting? But you all get along together. That's something that really appeals to me about bankruptcy, is you fight hard for your clients, you do what you think is right, but you all seem to like each other. I'm sure many of you don't, but you all seem to. And you've got a great bar, and I think you're lucky, because litigators aren't that way. I also remember, I'm almost through, don't worry. I had to argue my first motion. I think it was summary judgment. It was in front of a Judge Osgood Williams, I still remember, in Fulton County, I think Superior Court. And I was going up against an attorney at Hansel Post, which is now Jones Day. And I remember his name because I looked him up in Martindale Hubble. His name was Jefferson D. Kirby III. And he went to University of Virginia and really did well there. And here I was, a year out of law school or 6 months at Emory. I was scared to death going up against Jefferson Kirby. When I finally saw him, he had a shaved head. He looked like Mr. Clean. It was before people shaved their heads. So he was kind of scary looking anyway. And I remember the night before the argument, I stood in front of the mirror and had my jacket on, and I practiced my oral argument. I think I had actually boxer shorts with my jacket on, doing my oral argument stuff. And I went in and did it. And I did the best I could. And now it's a blur. I have no idea how I did. But afterwards, Mr. Kirby came up to me, and he said, hey, you did a really good job, Mike. You've got a gift. And he walked away from me. Now, this is opposing counsel saying you did really good, you got a gift. So I went to see Kip Kirkpatrick, the guy next door to me, and he's just retired a couple of years ago, I think. I said, Kip, what's going on with this Kirby guy? He's playing mind games with me, He came up to me afterwards and he said, you did good, you got a gift. What's here? And I remember Kip said to me, well, maybe he's telling you did well, because you did well. It's okay to do that. You can be on the other side and say, I enjoyed litigating against you. You did a nice job. I said, really? You'd say that to the guy you're trying to beat him? So I didn't know that in law school. I really did learn from these guys how to relate to clients, how to relate to people, what clothes to wear, what drink to drink. They were my role models. So the point I guess I'm trying to make tonight is these people coming out of law school who may look great on paper are probably like you were when you got out of law school. They really are not as confident as they may seem. They don't know what's going on, and they really can use your help. No matter where they went to law school, no matter how well they did, they need your help. And what they're going to do is what I did. They may not ask you directly. They're going to watch you, and they're going to see how you relate to clients, and they're going to see how you treat other lawyers, and they're going to see how the respect you show to the judge. And they're like little ducklings. I know I was kind of trying to absorb as much as I could to figure out how to be a good lawyer. If you work at a firm where the guys on top are jerks, and I'm sure I remember getting pleadings sometimes. You'd see the name of the firm, and you think, oh, crap. I'm going to have to deal with these people. Now, how can the whole firm be made up of jerks? Well, there's a culture. You copy. It goes from the top on down. I really believe that. So you older guys, you senior guys, it's your obligation to create that environment. When I first started teaching here, I taught trial practice and evidence. And I bring in guest speakers and things, And almost every attorney in Middle Georgia said, you know, I learned from this guy, Hank O'Neill. I learned at the feet of Hank O'Neill. And he had such an influence. Bankruptcy people. I learned from Jerry Kaplan. I learned at the feet of Jerry Kaplan. There was always somebody who trained people, and they would train people. Manly Brown had learned from Hank O'Neill, who trained a whole group of students here. My worry is, I know it's business. I understand law is business. I know you got to build time. Even back in the 70s, I had a sheet where I kept track of every 6 minutes, okay? I did just like you did. 1,800 hours, they were happy with me back then. I don't think Olson and Bird would be happy with 1,800 hours anymore. I don't know. But I just don't want you to get so wound up in the business end and the billable hour end that you don't take time to talk to people like me right out of law school, to counsel me, to be available for us, and to share all that you've learned with the younger people. And I guess that is the point of my lecture, that you're so important to us. You know, law schools, get them started. But you guys are the ones who really create good lawyers. And I appreciate the chance to be here and give you that message, okay? Thank you very much. And for $15, these will be on sale after the program's over, okay? Thank you.
Wow, what a hard act to follow, that one. Thank you so much for that. My part is the easiest part because I now call the annual meeting of the W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court to order. The easiest part now is to call on our distinguished treasurer, Kenny Stone, to present the financial report.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to report tonight that the inn is not in immediate need of bankruptcy. Due to the good management by your executive committee, we have collected dues this year of $29,625, and we have in the bank, as of today, $40,229.62. Now, I don't know what Walter spent on his meal tonight, but we may be, but we should be okay, so thank you.
Good, thank you, Kenny. I now call on Counselor-elect Rob Williamson to present the officer nominations for 2019-2020.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rob Williamson. I think I know just about everybody here, and I'm going to skip over that for a minute while Walter goes and grabs the ballot. I don't know if the votes have been counted, but I want to urge all masters are entitled to, and we want them to vote. So if you didn't get a ballot out by the front door, please fill one out and put it in the box before you leave here tonight. I printed out everything but the ballot. Walter reports that the slate won by acclamation, but just to report, for next year, your officers will be, assuming that in fact all those votes are counted and they come out this way, which I think they will. The president next year will be Judge Paul Bazier. I will be serving as counselor. The president-elect is Judge Ed Coleman from the Southern District. Jim Drake from the Southern District will be the counselor-elect for next year. John Thompson from Atlanta will serve as the secretary. And we were able to twist Kenny Stone's arm again to serve as the treasurer. So those are your officers, and we appreciate all the hard work that everybody does in the organization. We do have a very fine executive committee, and we'll talk in a few minutes about the work that Walter and Judge Smith did this year. They did a fine job, and we had regular executive committee calls, and most of the people on the executive committee really made an effort to be on those calls, and we were able to kind of get a lot done that way and get it done a lot more efficiently. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. On behalf of the executive committee, I want to say thanks to all who made this year so successful. Special thanks to Judge Drake for his devoted support, to Judge Smith for his distinguished service as president of this inn, to Judge Bezier and Rob Williamson as president-elect and counselor-elect, to all mentors and pupils. We hope the pupils enjoyed your year with us, because you are what this inn is about. And we hope that you will continue as inn members as you embark on your new careers. I also want to have special thanks and special recognition to our financial sponsors, and those are King and Spalding, Morris, Manning and Martin, Alston and Bird, and Kilpatrick Townsend. From the membership committee, I welcome these new associates: Amy Pickett Sanders from Alston and Bird, Josh Stein from Nelson Mullins, Sarah Primrose, King and Spalding, Tom Clinkscales from Alston and Bird, and Laura DiBiase from Miller Martin. I also thank all who participated in the 6 excellent and well-attended programs this year. And I have to say special thanks again to Professor Sabbath for all of his assistance at the Mercer Law School seminar and for his outstanding presentation tonight. But I save this special presentation to Judge Drake for right now. With his input and approval, a lapel pin was commissioned that is unique to our Inn of Court. Here is the first one out of the box, as I promised him I would save it for him. When you get your readers out, and you will see that your pen is on the table. And for anyone who does not want to have the pen that goes through your lapel, I've got the magnet version that I can also trade in for you. But this is what the inscription reads: The W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court. At the bottom of the coat of arms is the Latin word excellentia, meaning excellence and merit. It is there for this reason: our inn preserves and promotes the highest standards of excellence in professionalism, ethics, civility, and legal skills. When you wear this pin, let it be a reminder of this commitment to excellence. I now call on Rob Williamson for the tentative calendar of the inn. Rob?
All right, we're taking over and we're shaking things up. We're going to do things a little bit out of order.
Kind of like Abbott and Costello. Who's on first?
Only not nearly as funny. But so I think first we should probably
Yeah,
call
absolutely.
Walter and Judge Smith.
If Walter and
Up to,
Judge Smith would come on up front, we have a little something for them. And while they're coming up, let me just go over to the highlights from this past year. And we want to thank Judge Smith and Walter for what a great job they did and what fine leadership they showed in leading the inn this year. We had a number of great programs this past year. I won't go through everything, but it was chock full of fine topics, and most of these would not be real riveting to the non-bankruptcy folks in the room. But first we had the Mac Bag program that we've started doing as a tradition in Atlanta. And Neil Gordon and Judge Deal spoke there on suing universities and others to recover tuition payments and treatment of products liability and similar claims in bankruptcy. in reopened cases. And that was a very good program, was well attended.
Very well attended. MacBag is our consumer organization, for those who don't know. And
Yeah, I think that's what Metropolitan Atlanta Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, I think is the...
attorneys group, I think is.
And so that's turned out to be a good alliance between the Inn. We've done that the last few years, and we're going to continue that next year. In November in Savannah, there were decentralized programs. Ron Whitaker was the CEO of Colt Firearms, spoke about going through their Chapter 11 case, and I understand that was a very good program. In December, we sponsored a program at as part of the State Bar Seminar at Lake Oconee, and I think that was Nancy Rappaport's session that the Inn sponsored, and that was a very good program. We also, in December, donated $1,000 to the Georgia Legal Services Corporation, which we believe and the executive committee all decided there was a need there, and very consistent with the purpose and the mission of the Inn, and so that was, Walter spearheaded that as well. January 28th, we had a great program at Mercer here in Macon. Walter not only put that together, he was a speaker, and he spoke there on the family farms and the use of Chapter 12 to save the family farms. Wes Boyer did a great presentation on the history of bankruptcy from Moses to Madoff. And then we had a great lunch. Mercer hosted the Inn, and I think provided a fine luncheon for everybody after that program. So that was also an excellent program. There were some decentralized meetings in Macon in April. And in Atlanta, there was a decentralized program at Manuel's Tavern, and Gus Small did an excellent presentation there on bankruptcy jurisdiction. Are we back where we started in 1898? And they circulated the materials after that, and I'm saving those materials, Gus, and he did an excellent job. Well, I won't reprint them.
Without express written permission.
Exactly. And then, of course, this meeting has taken a lot of work for Walter and Judge Smith to get this organized and put together and have such a fine speaker as Professor Sabbath. And again, Professor Sabbath, we very much appreciate you speaking to us here tonight. So let's give a hand to Walter and Judge Smith for last year.
I'd like to thank them for being fine stewards of this organization. We hope to be able to do, even if we do half as well, we'll have had a great year.
And to as a token of appreciation by the Inn to Walter and Judge Smith, we have had these plaques made for them. I'll read them to you. They've got the logo of the Inn at the top, the W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court. This one says, thanks to Walter W. Kelly for his outstanding leadership as counselor for 2018-2019. I want to give that to you, Walter. Thank you. Appreciate it. Absolutely.
This one, of course, says thanks to James B. Smith for his outstanding leadership as president during the 2018-2019 year.
Let's
Thanks
give
very
them
much.
another hand. And I think Judge Basie is going to give us the coming attractions here to expect for next year.
Yes.
And the nice thing I'll mention, I was speaking to somebody before tonight. Not only did Walter put on this year's programs, but he and, of course, the program committee, and I want to give thanks to all the committee chairs because without their hard work and the committees that we have, the hard work, none of this would happen. But they put together these great programs for this year, and we are chock full. In fact, we're all filled up for our programs for next year. So I know Judge Basie won't do this, but if I were to fall on my face and have a belly flop next year, we're still going to have a damn good year. And it'll be the next year's counselor and president that will get the blame for not having programs the following year. So anyway, we'll try to leave them with something, get some programs planned for them as well.
We'll try to leave them in as good a stead as they have left us. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing next year. I hope Professor Sabbath isn't too horrified, but he has two former King and Spalding lawyers up here. At least I can't say I'm not in a Brooks Brothers or a H. Stockton suit. I can't speak for Rob, but
I'll never tell.
that I used to be able to afford a.
Where's that discount place? I want to get that info from you.
either that as a client, maybe. In any event, for our next year starts soon. It actually starts next week. In Atlanta, we were a sponsor of a judges panel and reception on June 18th. And I'm trying to remember, I guess my notes had that where that was written down. Anyway, it's
The Grand Hyatt.
it's the Grand Hyatt, June 18th at 4 p.m., I believe. An event sponsored by the TMA and the
Yeah, TMA and the CFA are sponsoring that, and then there are a number of individual sponsors, law firms, and some of the financial consulting firms.
right, but the program is on the new large case rules that we've adopted here in the Northern District. I don't know, or in the Northern District anyway. I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with those. But they'll hopefully streamline larger cases. The cases they generally apply to, 25 million in assets or liabilities. And they also, for the Northern District in Atlanta, set up a panel of 2 judges, the initial panel being the Honorable Judge Bonifeld, as well as Judge Hagenow, are the initial 2-judge panel for our complex cases. So that will be next week. You'll be able to learn more about those rules and about how all of that is going to work. The rules are also available in our other divisions if the judge will designate your case as an appropriate case. The Middle District is having its Bankruptcy Law Institute on September 20th, 2019, as part of our programs. Then in October, on the 24th, this is a nationwide program that is also being presented at the 11th Circuit. It's a program on diversity in the federal judiciary. There'll be a national webcast followed by a local discussion groups. The discussion group will meet at the 11th Circuit and will involve lots of judges discussing opportunities in the federal judiciary. And we are a sponsor of that. Then we'll have decentralized meetings in October and November. We will once again join the State Bar of Georgia's bankruptcy section out at Lake Oconee in December, have more decentralized meetings February and March, and a lovely annual meeting somewhere in a location to be determined in Atlanta next year. So that's the schedule that's been nicely developed for us. It sounds like a great year to me. Rob and I will do our very best to make all those events as positive as possible for everyone. And I think with that, you got anything else?
No, I think that's it.
For the good of the order?
For the good of the order, don't let any wine glasses have any wine left in them when you leave here tonight. But I think we're finished, and I think we're ready to adjourn the meeting.
Cocktail party after.
Cocktail party afterwards.
Is that in here?
And thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for attending. Great attendance here tonight. It's great to look out and see this many people. I know some of you are local, but a lot of people drove from pretty far to come to the meeting, and this has been an excellent event. The food was excellent, which Judge Smith was kind enough to give us the tip on that.
I cooked it.
You cooked it? Crab cake was excellent.
I did want to say, and I'm remiss to have forgotten, but I think, as everyone knows, if you wanted sort of the brand name in Georgia in the bankruptcy area, Judge Homer Drake is it. And I want to say for myself, and I'm sure Rob echoes this, that I couldn't be more honored and proud to be the president of an organization that's associated with Judge Drake. And I hope to be able to just live up to that legacy during the course of our year. But thank you, Judge Drake, and we really appreciate your being here.
Meeting adjourned.